to this conversation presented by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer. White House Custom Color is a premier professional photography and press printing lab serving photographers around the globe. Be sure to check us out at whcc.com. Jen Bertrand is my guest today. I met up with her at Push Conference in Indiana, and she is great. She's one of those people that, from my experience, you start talking to and you think to yourself, this person is really sharp, really witty, knows what's up, and is forthcoming and honest and open and just a real blast to be around. She had some major changes a few years ago, and she had to go through a rebranding for her business as she came to some realizations about who she was and what she was doing and why. Listen in as her and I dive in to what her life looks like now. We're going to talk about rebranding, right?
Yeah.
Or what you did to go through that process. And,
absolutely.
And what it looked like and what happened and
100%.
Soul searching and...
That's the stuff, yeah.
Well, let's start with this. Tell me who you are.
Well, that's a deep question. My name's Jen Bertrand, and I'm a photographer based in Dallas, Texas. And I shoot editorial style, kind of magazine style portraits for creative and business professionals, teens and seniors, and actors and models. So I run the gamut on all of that.
Right.
Mostly studio based. And I've been doing this for 20 some odd years at this point.
Is that right?
Yeah, started early on, but not in its full capacity. But
you are a cagey and wily veteran.
Yes, I'm one of the old school who learned on film. And
like you go back to when we go back to.
Yes.
I did not realize that.
Yes, I actually have a degree in photojournalism from the University of Texas at Austin.
Wow.
Hook 'em.
Yeah.
And started out with film. And right as I was graduating, everything was switching over to digital.
Right.
So then I had to kind of learn a lot out of college and basically relearn the medium on a digital format.
It's pretty different.
It is and it isn't, but especially with the studio lighting, it's just gotten a lot easier to use.
It has, but not then.
Oh, no.
Nobody knew what was going on then.
No, and I learned on the old Novatron and Speedotron packs.
I will never forget what all of that was like, because we didn't have the YouTubes or the Facebooks or the...
Very true.
And the Google was sort of there, but you couldn't really Google. Google doesn't mean anything if there's nothing there to Google.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. I think it was like GeoCities at that point.
Oh,
who
knows what it was? I mean, I remember Ask Jeeves and on Yahoo and AOL, and you put a keyword in, but you couldn't just be like, I don't know what to do about digital photography, help.
No. And what was interesting is the woman I was working for at the time, Mary Beth Greenwood, was in Austin. She's since passed, but she was old school, even more old school.
Right.
And was real deep into the rock and roll scene in Austin, Texas. And so I learned a lot from her working in studio, and she knew nothing about digital. So I was trying to learn digital so that then I could teach my mentor digital while she taught me business.
Right, which is key.
Yes.
And so now that we're talking about this, I want to ask you really quick, what have the changes... right, in the last 20 years, because there have been significant changes. Yes. What has that looked like to your life personally?
Oh my gosh. Personally, I would say first and foremost, it's been a lot of continuing education. A lot. And constantly just trying to kind of keep up with the new technology. While also trying to temper my wallet and my bank account so I don't go nuts being a gearhead.
Yes. Right. No, that's a big deal. Because you could upgrade every other year.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
absolutely.
significantly.
Absolutely. So that's been really, kind of tough, not getting trigger happy on the interwebs with
The spendings.
the spendings, y'alls. But personally too, it's just been kind of a growth because we've seen, with digital, there's so much more that you can do creatively,
Right.
in a much shorter amount of time.
Right.
So what's been awesome is that has been able to open up doors for my own creativity, because part of the reason why I even got into photography in the first place was I always had this like creative drive, and I always wanted to be like an artist, like a real artist, but I could never get my hand to do what my brain saw.
Is that right?
Yeah, I could not draw to save my life.
Okay.
I could play a mad game of tic-tac-toe or hangman, but that was about as far as it was going to go. So, I was around a lot of photography. My next door neighbor growing up was a professional photographer.
Really?
My dad was the guy who was constantly following his kids with the old VHS recorder.
Is that right?
Oh, all the time.
Lots of footage of little Jen.
Oh, yes. And siblings. And so I just was around it all the time. And I had an older sister who's about 8 years older than me. And she was in photography when she was in high school. And of course, wanting to be just like her.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, I want to see. And then I became an angsty teen and started shooting black and white photos, So that's really, for me is kind of where it all started, and that was my creative outlet since I still could not draw no matter how hard I tried. And kind of just took off from there and went to college for it. So what's really neat at this point is just being able to even mix, kind of the mediums and especially with the lighting equipment at this point and the different modifiers, it's really neat to see kind of where my creative limits are and then push past those.
How have you handled the tremendous influx of photographers over the last 20 years?
Oh,
because you remember when there weren't so many.
I remember when there weren't so many. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I think at first there was that fear, especially amongst the older school photographers of all these, young whippersnappers coming in and taking my money. And,
I heard those pretty much those exact words.
Yeah.
Really? Sometimes
verbatim.
Sometimes with some expletives.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. And, at first it was kind of that like Chicken Little, oh my gosh, the sky's falling. We're all going to be broke. And, and
it's
staff
over.
Photographers are getting laid off left and right.
Yeah, we watched that happen.
Yes. And that was right when I was graduating.
Oh, my.
With a photojournalism degree.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Goodbye, $32,000. Yes. So,
which seems like a huge bargain right now, actually.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Goodbye, $32,000 a semester.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I got out, just in the nick of time.
You really did.
But, there was a little bit of that, that fear at first. And then I started hearing, some photographers, I can't even remember which ones they were, but I know like Dane Sanders was, part of that whole movement of, you have to adapt.
Right.
And that is something that's even, basic instincts for us as humans, evolve or die.
Right.
Is really what it comes down to.
Yes.
And thankfully, I was young enough to be able to make that transition fluidly enough, but still having a lot of that old school teaching that some of those techniques still stick with me even in my digital photography. So what I love now is that a lot of these younger photographers that are coming up are so driven. They are so incredibly creative.
Yeah. And
they grew up with Wacom tablets and, Photoshop and being so inspired by what it is that they're doing and getting inspired to get off my butt and push myself even farther.
Yeah, the term JPEG is just part of the lexicon for anybody these days. I remember, and it wasn't that long ago, the first time a client used the term JPEG to describe one of the images.
Yeah.
And I did not like it. Seriously.
You mean a negative?
Well, I was just like, how do you know
Yeah.
it's a JPEG? You know, because it was always pictures.
Pictures.
Right?
Yep.
That's what my dad calls them, pictures.
Pictures.
And we of course started using the term imagery and image. You know, you turn the words into something that means more, right?
Absolutely.
Just from a marketing standpoint. But when they started saying JPEGs, and then wasn't long after that they started saying the word Photoshop, which previously was the software that I was privy to.
Yep.
But banked on the fact that my clients certainly were not.
Absolutely.
That was the secret sauce. And now, to even refer to it as secret sauce sounds ludicrous.
The secret sauce.
Well, like everybody knows what Photoshop is, and everybody knows what JPEGs are, right?
Absolutely.
So we have been through a gigantic transition, really, even in a broader sense. Like you were saying, like you have to evolve, and regardless of what that looks like, whether it's in the photography industry or in your personal life or anything else that's going on. You evolve or die. You have to.
It's
one of the two.
Well, and the way I look at it too is, what fun is it being stagnant?
Well, sometimes I like being stagnant. I could talk about that a lot.
When Game of Thrones is on. Yes.
Boy, when that last season comes out, there's going to be a lot of stagnation.
Oh my
this
gosh.
way.
It's going to be like post-apocalyptic. The entire world's just going to shut down.
No, don't call me.
Don't call me.
Don't even text me. I don't want my phone to do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But I get it. No. Okay. So in all seriousness, what fun is it to be stagnant? That's a really good question. And really, for me, I would say, it's only fun for a little bit, and then then it becomes very not fun.
Well, and I think every artist even goes through this, which is you find that groove, and you make that money, and it's coming in, and it's coming in, and you kind of get into that routine, and at some point you burn out because you're sick of it.
My wife and I called that the Rut of Success.
Yes.
Because you've been there. You've been in the Rut of Success.
Yep.
And you kind of, at some point, you rest on your laurels and you get a little complacent.
100%.
Because you're just like, ugh. And then at some point you realize, oh, crap.
Yes. And you're dialing it in, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Just going to dial it in. It looks great. You look great. Fantastic. You're doing great.
Click, click.
Yep.
Nice.
Click, click. Woo. Fantastic. These will be to you in a week to 2 weeks.
It's like an automatron.
It is. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
And you just kind of go through that, and then something just starts not feeling right. And my husband would call it the sitting in a dirty diaper feeling, where you know that something's wrong and something's got to change.
Oh my gosh. I like your husband.
Yes. My husband he's a good one. He is. Keeps me laughing.
But it's in a dirty diaper feeling. Okay.
Yeah, but it's an apt description. The way I think of it is just like you feel icky and you don't really want to talk about it. You don't want to tell anybody else.
Let's not discuss it.
Yeah.
But something's off.
Yeah, but it is off, and you just don't want to sit in it. But you're not quite sure what to do about it. How do we begin to take care of this problem?
Well, because you have to address it, and that's part of the issue.
Absolutely.
How much does that relate to what we've talking about today regarding your process of rebranding?
Well, it's that perfect metaphor, quite honestly. And my husband, bless his heart, was, my Texas is showing. Bless his heart.
Well, keep going. That's you. You do you.
He, he's been with me on this journey. In fact, I started out photographing his band in high school.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
What kind of band was it?
It was a little punk band.
Yes.
In the 90s.
I knew it was.
We met in 95.
Oh my.
Yes.
Right when, in my opinion, as far as on a grand scale, the music started to turn.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Absolutely.
I like the early 90s.
Yeah.
I'm not such a big fan of the late 90s.
Oh,
for
man,
the most part.
95 to 96, you still had some really good gems.
In the middle, it was fine.
Man.
But by the time we got to the end,
it
was like, what happened to this decade?
Yep.
It's kind of like the 70s with disco.
Yeah.
I think if I was a huge Floyd fan or a big Zeppelin fan, by the end of the 70s, I would have been like, what happened?
Yeah.
How did this turn?
Yeah. Although I'm not one to pass up ABBA. I will say that.
Oh, I love it. So, that's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Of mine.
Oh, man. Nothing guilty about
ABBA
that. I embrace that fully.
That's one of the best albums of all time. you get me alone in a room with some Dancing Queen, and
it's on.
Over.
Oh, that's a challenge.
But I got to be alone. I'm not as proud of it as you are.
Man, let it fly. Let it fly, man.
I do when I'm by myself. So you were photographing his band, so he's been with you from then.
Off and on since 95. Okay. Yeah, okay. First love. And it was one of those things we went through all of the stages of friendship, mortal enemies, best friends. And it was one of those things
we both solidly married couple right now.
Yes, absolutely.
I can relate to that too.
Absolutely, yeah. But he's my absolute best friend, and an incredible support system. And I think that that's something that is very, very important for artists is finding their support system. Yeah. And really, a lot of this was kind of coming all about because we up and moved from Austin to Dallas and knew virtually no one. Okay.
So you were in Austin.
I was in Austin from 99 until the end of 2012.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I had been establishing my business there. Yeah. I was working for a really amazing wedding studio that was one of the top in the area. Yeah. My business was building up, and then he got what we like to call the Godfather offer. Yeah. It was just that thing we could not refuse.
You can't refuse it.
And so we up and moved to Dallas, and I basically had to start my business all over again. Yeah. I knew virtually no one. I think we knew 2 people that were outside of his boss and, the staff at his office.
What a nice big market.
Yes, a huge market. Right? And that was really what I look forward to. Yeah. But the challenge being, how do I get into that market?
Of course.
And then all of a sudden being 100% full-time with photography. I did a lot of commuting back and forth to finish out jobs in Austin.
3 or 4 hours? How far is it?
Yeah, it's about a 3.5-hour drive. Right. So if you don't hit traffic. Right. And then you hit that I-35 corridor and you're... So that took quite a bit for us to get adjusted to. And all of a sudden I was alone in our apartment for 10, 12 hours a day. He was an attorney at the time, so he was working late hours, leaving before I was even waking up. Yeah. And, how do you start a business and network when you know no one?
Right.
And I was like, what am I doing? I have no idea. And so it all even kind of started from that and just kind of being alone all the time and not really knowing what I was going to do and kind of freaking out. Like, is this the end of my business? Should I even keep going? And I started meeting a lot of really amazing photographers online, Amanda Holloway being one of them.
She's in Houston, right?
Right outside of Houston. Yeah, she's in Huntsville. And she was, a wonderful resource and who became a dear, dear friend of mine.
Oh, good.
Love her. Absolutely love her. But she kind of helped inspire me and kind of push me really forward into the senior photography market because it was something I was interested in and I was ramping up while I was in Austin.
Right.
And so since I did have all this time to myself, I was like, I'm just going to learn as much as I possibly can to get out in this market and just make a bang in Dallas.
So then you do that to some extent, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But then what happened a year ago or whatever you were talking about?
So in that time, my husband and I were trying to start our family.
Okay.
And we had a lot of stress, but we also could not conceive for about 3.5 years.
I know what
and that was like. Really tough, especially when all of my girlfriends back home who I was missing were all starting their families. And, he was gone. I couldn't conceive. My business was virtually non-existent at that point. And it just kind of was this soul-searching crisis for me. And we did eventually conceive in 2015, which was huge. But then it was, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a mother.
You're going to be a mom now.
I'm going to be a mom now.
Right.
And now I have to figure out how to be an entrepreneur and a mom.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
And my daughter was born in February of 2016. And she was not an easy baby. I love her, and I do. And she is so wonderful. And at the same time, she was very colicky. She had reflux. I was not sleeping. She was not sleeping. My husband was stressed with work because he was working for this big law firm. And it really took its toll. And it started to take its toll on our marriage. And what I realized in that process was I was suffering from postpartum depression.
Oh, is that right?
Absolutely. And I was still in that point where I was at home with the baby. For 12 hours a day by myself. My husband gets home. He doesn't want to do anything because he's been getting his butt kicked at the law firm all day, working for 12, 14 hours. And it was really rough. And I had to really do a lot of that soul searching to figure out, you know, as a mother, can I do this? Financially, can we do this? And if I do this, what is it going to look like? And what is it going to take for me to get to that point where I can make this, you know, a viable career in Dallas as a mother?
Did you think, what is it going to cost?
Yes.
I don't just mean financially. Like, what is it going to cost?
Yes.
To do this?
Absolutely. Work-life balance, needing to be there, you know, for my daughter, for my husband. And at the time, you know, I was doing a lot of the domestic work too, to take it off of his plate.
Of course.
Because of the amount of stress that he was under.
Right.
And with me being home with the baby, he was primary breadwinner. So I finally decided, you know, I had some savings from my business account before I went on maternity leave. And finally started getting consistent childcare, which was a very difficult part of that process. And once that happened, you know, I started thinking, you know, I don't know what my brand is. I know I've been shooting images that I think or I feel that people want to see, not what was really in my heart. And what I started realizing was the images that I was shooting that I shot straight from the heart, things that I wanted to shoot, were the images that were resonating with people either on Instagram or on my website, or even my husband going, whoa, that's really good. And he could tell, you know, and he has watched my work since I was 15 when I started out, you know, and that was when I just kind of made this commitment of, if I'm going to raise a young girl in this society, in this day and age, and I want her to be strong and independent, and not base her self-worth on her outward appearance, I have to model that, and I have to show that. And a lot of what I was doing was covering up who I really was to put out the image of who I thought I needed to be in order to be successful as a photographer, especially through social media.
What did it look like?
Oh, gosh. Following everybody else's things and trying to figure out, okay, this is a trend, or is this what I need to do? You know, whether it was using a specific preset or, you know, specific verbiage on, you know, Instagram captions or, you know, whatever the case may be, or product offerings or
all the verbiage.
I mean, and all of that changes so much. And that was part of it too, was like, okay, you know, I'm going to get this preset, and I start working with that preset, and I realized, like, I just don't like this. And I kept going back to my clean edits, which is, you know, the way that I had learned early on through the old school. So, it was just a lot of me, I think, still even trying to find myself as an artist and as an individual who's now a mother, but still doesn't want to give up that independence as an individual either, you know? So that's when I kind of went on this like soul searching. Okay, I really need to focus in on my business, what I'm offering, what I really want to shoot, and get somebody on board with me who can make that vision come alive. So I called up another great friend of mine, Devin Jones, who's a photographer out in Wichita Falls. She's a former push speaker for Senior Style Guide. And I know that she had worked with a designer. And I said, hey, called her up and I said, look, you know, I'm thinking about doing a rebrand. And I know you've spoken really highly of your designer, Brittany Janine, of Brittany Janine and Company. And before I could even say, like, finish Brittany's name, Devin was like, just do it.
Really?
Just do it.
Really?
Yes. And what she said to me was, you and Brittany both have that edgy aesthetic. And when I heard that word again, which I kept hearing, it kind of kept popping up, edgy, edgy, edgy. Yeah. I was like, this is what's missing from my life is there is that, I call myself I'm kind of rock and roll with a hippie soul, you know. I love my essential oils and get a little granola on occasion. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm listening to the Foo Fighters and Metallica and, you know, old school punk. And, you know, I grew up with 2 DJs. That's part of my life, you know. My parents are disc jockeys. I grew up with it. And I was putting so much of that to the side because I thought I needed to be a very specific way in this industry to be successful and to be accepted by my colleagues too. Okay. And people kept saying, you know, I love it. You know, you're kind of edgy. You're kind of edgy. And I was like, you know, that's what I need to, I am, you know, and that's what I need to infuse into my brand. So I took a leap of faith and I sent an email to Brittany and I just said, I'm in desperate need. You came highly recommended by Devin. She contacted me. We hit it off right away. And I was like, okay, this is it. And
where's she from?
She was at the time based in Orlando. She's now in Atlanta. Okay. Yes. And a phenomenal designer. And I knew she just got me. And we both kind of had the same reaction, which is when we looked at each other's stuff, we were like, yep. You're my people. You're my people. So awesome. I got on board with her, and it's funny because I thought I was like, okay, you know, here I am. I'm on this journey. I know what I need to do for my business, which is rebrand. And she sent me this homework, and I procrastinated. And I procrastinated because I was, you know, pregnant, and I was like, okay, or I guess at that time I had my baby. And so just being a mom, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then it came time to submit my homework, and she's like, hey, how's it going with that homework?
Where's
and I was like, I'll get that right to you. And I ended up saying to her, you know, I have some questions about the branding side of this. Is this something that you're going to help me with, you know, figuring out, you know, what copy to write on my website? And I just didn't have a clear picture of what all was going to be required of me, just because I think I still had my head in the sand. And she was like, let me refer you to somebody. And I said, okay. And she says, I think you need, you know, this person, and then come back to me in, you know, 3 months, and we'll get started. Okay. I said, okay, I trust you. She says, I think this is going to be really big for you. So she recommended that I speak with this woman, Alina Marie, and she is a professional, a former copywriter, and among other things, I mean, a creative. I think she did photography at one point too, but she gave me this incredible homework that really forced me to soul search. Got deep down into not just who is your ideal client, but why, and who are you, and what is your purpose, you know? And
what is your purpose?
What is your purpose? And I was like, you know, and I really started thinking about it, and had to dig deep. And for me, it was always, you know, wanting to be of service to people and build their confidence. As a kid growing up, I was picked on a whole lot. I didn't have a lot of confidence. And I think that was part of what drove me into the senior portrait industry, was being able to give that to young men and women, is that confidence of someone who's not their parent. Because, of course, when your parent tells you, oh, you're so beautiful, you're like, okay, you have to say that. You're my parent.
You're my parent.
Yeah. And, but having someone else really look at them and say, you know, you are incredible. You are beautiful. You have so much to offer this world, and I'm going to show you. And I realized, too, that my headshot clients were still struggling with the same thing. Oh. Yeah. Even more surprising, a lot of my professional men who were in business, had been for a while, still had the same insecurities as a 13-year-old girl. And that really made an impact on me. And that was when I really realized, okay, what I'm putting out there into the world needs to resonate with people, and they need to understand that this is not just me taking your picture. This is something more than that. Because nobody goes to a photographer wanting to look ugly.
True. Very true.
So what can I do to help them, not just with a photograph, but with something that they can take that is beyond that image, take that into their everyday life and make an impact that will stick with them. And that kind of became that focus, and at the same time having to take my own medicine in that and build up my own self-confidence and my own self-worth and say, I do have something to offer that is uniquely me, and there is a place for this. So going through that process with Alina and then going back to Brittany, and when I went back to Brittany, it was like there was not enough space on the homework sheets to put in everything I had to say.
You had to add papers.
I had to add
for your
papers.
Essays that you were writing.
Exactly. And when she came back with that first round of, the logo and the colors and all of the inspiration, and we went through visually too with a Pinterest board, which was extremely helpful. I mean, she nailed it right away. And when I saw sort of not only my business, but kind of the vision that I had for my career, my future, and my clients and future clients all wrapped up into this mood board that she had created, I was like, this is it.
That's it.
It's it. And when I relaunched in June of 2017, the impact was massive. Just with friends and colleagues who went, oh my gosh, this is totally you.
Why do you think, so after hearing all of that, what stands out to me is regarding the purpose piece, right? And when you said that you felt your purpose was to essentially, and I'll use my words.
Sure.
I felt like you felt like your purpose was to show people compassion.
Yes.
Because you know what it was like to be picked on.
Yeah.
Why do you think you chose compassion as opposed to bitterness?
Oh, man.
Because you could have gone the other way.
I could have gone the other way.
And a lot
Absolutely.
of people do. I mean, really, a lot of people do. They go, a bully was bullied.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
But you intentionally chose compassion. Why did you do that?
Because I know how it feels, and I never want to make someone else feel that way, because it's extremely painful. It's isolating. And, we're humans, and we're pack animals by nature, and we need each other. And the way I kind of look at it is, and this is kind of my just personal philosophy is, this world is already hard enough as it is. Why are we making it more difficult on each other? Being rude and being selfish. And part of that's a lot of self-awareness too. And I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I struggled with the postpartum depression, and before that, I spent years in therapy, and it was probably one of the greatest tools that I've ever had, and it has served my marriage. It has served my friendships and even me as an individual, and, asking for that help and having people who did help me and who have helped me throughout the way, and, realizing that I could not do it on my own. So why should I expect that other people can do it on their own? And knowing how much I hid from people around me. And even still, when I talk about, I was struggling from postpartum depression. I was crying every day. Right. I would go off of social media and just, go into my introverted hole. People are like, really? You? Like, yes, we all hide it. Yes. Because we're not talking about it, and it's not.
Well, you're not going to put that on an Instagram story.
Absolutely not.
Right. Right.
But we are seeing this trend now towards people saying, yes, I struggled. Yeah. And being able to see people struggle on Instagram, since we do get just the highlights a lot of the time, it's extremely liberating, and it connects people. Yeah. And you realize that the strongest of them all is also struggling. Yeah. So for me, I think that that's kind of where that compassion comes from is because I know how painful it is, and I know what it feels like to feel alone, and that you can't ask for help. So to be someone that other people can talk to, come to, and that will have their back, that just, to me, means the world, because for me, it's almost like paying it forward, we got to get along, and
I think you're brave, Jen Bertrand.
Oh, thank you. It doesn't always feel that way, but thank you.
You're a hippie chick, rock and roller, brave girl.
Thank you.
That's how I see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing this with me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Where can people find you now?
You can find me online. My website is jenbertrandphoto.com, and it is BER. So BERTRAND .com. And I also teach studio lighting, and you can get there through that website, but it's enlightenworkshop.com. And then on Instagram, which is really the only social media that I pay attention to right now, because I'm so overwhelmed. I'm such a Gen Xer in that way. It's just Jen Bertrand Photo on Instagram.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Thank you
Have a wonderful time tonight at the Push Conference 2018 Gala.
I absolutely will.
Are you dressing up, or are you going like that?
Oh, no, I'm going to dress up a little bit as best I can.
And your denim.
Yep. I'm going to party down.
I think you look good right now. You should just roll in.
Just roll in how I am.
Yeah. Have a great time.
Thank you.